Hi everybody, this is Dan Stolbarger. Welcome to this week's KFIR Middle East Update. It's the week of March 5th. And so just a reminder, you want to make sure that you grab the PDF PowerPoint because there's always more information in the PowerPoint that we have time for with the video. So if you're on our YouTube channel, you can just see the link and click it, or go to our website at holygroundexplorations.com. As you know by now, we usually begin with what we call news bites. No big revelation here, but coming out of Israel, coming out of the Palestinian Daily Op-Ed, is the newest blood libel against Israelis is that now they're claiming the newest war crime against Israel is the fact that Israel are killing Palestinian prisoners with the coronavirus. Again, just last week, we talked about the rise of anti-Semitism, blood libels. We talked about how even on Saturday Night Live, jokes were made that Israelis were only vaccinating Israelis, not Arabs, not Palestinians or whatever. Total fabrication and lies. And as this sort of becomes the fodder, people may think, oh, it's only a joke, but they don't realize that this becomes the fodder for terrorism. And so this is not a joke whatsoever. This is not happening. This is a blood libel. Okay, what else? Mike Pompeo's in the news, and he just indicates that during the election period that U.S. officials did their best to undermine the Abrahamic Accords, to deflect and to put the spotlight on Palestinians and the need for a two-state solution, etc., etc. Unfortunately, we've hit the pause button on the Abrahamic Accord, which now we've created this situation where what are we going to do here? Are we going to negotiate and be peacemakers for the Abrahamic Accords? That's having to do primarily with nations and countries that line up against Iran, or are we going to flip the switch and rejoin a coalition with the so-called nuclear peace treaty with Iran? You have to wait and see, but I think the handwriting's on the wall. Saudi officials are hoping, praying that Netanyahu's fight against Iran, hoping that there's not a new government that comes into place because they're fearful that the opposition will change things. We're going to have to wait and see. We're going to start covering Israeli elections. There's an article you're going to find even here today. I know. I guess I inserted this for a smirk or a bit of humor, but there is a California bill that's in the state government right now that would fine stores, think Walmart, think Target or whatever, they would fine stores $1,000 if they have a separate section for boys' toys or girls' toys. $1,000 fine. Well, last on our news bites, interesting for all of you that have been to Israel. No doubt you've been on the Golan Heights and you've heard the story about the master spy, Eli Cohen. And the Russians recently have been negotiating. You know, there was a prisoner exchange between Israel and Syria. And we're reading that Russian soldiers are searching for Eli Cohen's remains. And they have a refugee camp near Damascus. It'll be interesting to see if it is discovered, if his remains are discovered, and if it becomes a negotiation ploy once again with Syria and Israel. I think Israel would do just about anything within means to get the remains back from Eli Cohen. Well, our major articles this week, just today, Not more than probably an hour ago, I read this from Bibi Netanyahu. It was a live update. His words, not mine, that the prime minister told Fox and Friends that Israel is the first country to emerge from the pandemic due to its quick and efficient vaccine campaign, and says that the country is largely done with the pandemic. He goes on to say, we are the first country in the world to emerge from Corona. And then he introduces the green passport, and he says, if you have a green passport or a green pass here in Israel, you can go to theaters, you can go to sporting events. This is it. His words, we're coming out. Now keep in mind, we have Israeli elections coming up later this month. So this is once again going to be a political hot potato. Who's going to take credit, or will there be a setback? This election, I think what transpires here will determine who wins the election. Now, as you know, last week, there was an Iranian attack on an Israeli cargo ship in the Gulf of Oman. Now it's come out, Netanyahu's made it clear it was indeed an act by Iran. And he's determined, in his words, he says, the Islamic Republic of Iran is the greatest enemy of Israel, and I am determined to halt it. We're going to hit it in every region possible. Earlier, the defense minister, Benny Gantz, said that he believed that Tehran was behind the explosion. It was just kind of a reminder from them that we're here. They didn't sink the ship. Some think they could have. But once again, this does nothing but create and continue the tension in the region, especially now in the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf. Red line. We often hear about Israeli red lines, and we talk about the situation with Iran and the nuclear program. But more and more, I'm reading that there is a red line that's even more dangerous to Israel than Iran's nuclear program. Hezbollah's missile arsenal is perhaps one of the threats that the Israeli public is not that aware of in terms of its full scope. The threat is strategic and could force Israel into a preemptive strike, even though the catalysts are not nuclear weapons. It's also the most burning issue facing the IDF's high command today. Thousands of these precision rockets are available now to Hezbollah, and they feel like they won the last Lebanese war with all the missile exchanges that took place. But now these precision rockets are much more accurate than the old Katyusha type of rocket. So big concern. And when we talk about preemptive strike, we're usually thinking about red lines, and we're thinking about Tehran and Iran, not so much Lebanon. We'll wait and see. I said that we're going to start following the elections in Israel. For the past year, the Yamnia, that Hebrew for the right or being right, the leader Naftali Bennett has found himself now in a new and overall unwelcome position. He's been a part of the opposition, and through Yamnia, it appears that there's a growing coalition that needs to be center-right, even more to the right, that will replace Likud. And his words is, it's time for Bibi to go. We need to replace Netanyahu with a national right-wing government. At least it needs to be the backbone of the coalition. And he just says it's been 30 years. Netanyahu has been in politics for 30 years. It's time to say thank you and goodbye. It's now a new era. And with the elections here in the States and with sort of this polarization in Israel, is this election going to be according to the facts of what's needed, or is it going to be simply, are you pro, are you anti-Bibi? And we've heard about the never Trumpers. There is a growing never Bibis sort of thing that's in Israel at this point in time. So these elections are coming up, and as I said, we'll continue to cover that as we get closer to the time of the elections. I mentioned Saturday Night Live. I guess this article is called Saturday Night Lies. You can read that. It's what I've already referred to in terms of the vaccine and the blood libels that are accusing Israel of only making it available to Israelis. And then there's this picture. You have to get the slide. This is slide number 12. And the title is, Can You Imagine? What you're looking at here goes back to the 11th century BC. Think Joshua. If we could take some steps back and see a panoramic view of this whole thing, we would see that this is Mount Ebal. In the valley between another mountain, which is Mount Gerizim, is Shechem. I'm not going to go into details because I don't have enough time to do that, but the blessings and the cursings that Joshua uttered in this place is, you can see there's an altar in the picture here that's sort of in the upper right-hand corner, and there's a wall that it goes all the way around this Mount Ebal. But you can see the part that's been destroyed. It just happened. The Palestinians are building a road that you can see beneath that, and they destroyed an 11th century BC wall, the time of Joshua. Can you imagine if this was an Islamic site, a Muslim site? We'd be in the midst of World War III right now. So again, we report what we see. This is what's taken place. Well, we're wrapping up here. A couple more things left. Anti-Semitism, once again, BBC headlines, as you can see this picture here. This is a car ramming that's taken place. And in Britain, the headlines concerning this article, as you can see, the IDF soldier being hit, thrown midair. Basically, after a Palestinian man crashed his car into this checkpoint near Jerusalem, it was abundantly clear what his actions were, but apparently not to Sky News or The Guardian, who are taking a malicious, anti-Israeli investigation far too seriously. They come out and claim that what transpires here is the execution of a Palestinian. I know. Unbelievable. And then last article, a concern for all of you that have been to Israel, you've been on the Golan, you understand the strategic importance of Israel maintaining the Golan. This has just sort of been linked in. And the reason I share this with you is because remember, under the Obama administration, who the vice president was. Okay, so like Obama, is it possible that Biden's policies will be similar, if not parallel to it? So this was just released a few months before the Syrian war erupted back in March of 2011. The Barack Obama administration offered the Assad regime, offered for an Israeli withdrawal from the Golan Heights in return for severing ties with Iran and Hezbollah. According to the report, which was relayed to the newspapers by senior American and Syrian officials who were involved in the negotiations at the time, the talks actually reached an advanced stage that was written up and a document was prepared for signing. What right do we have to tell Israel to give up the Golan Heights? Unbelievable. Anyhow, that's our report for this week. Hope you share it with a friend. It's a very important time in which we're living, and it's important for us to understand the significance of what's taking place in Israel in the Middle East. We need to be like the sons of Issachar that understand the times and know what we should be doing. God bless and shalom.